Thank you everyone for joining in. A very warm welcome to everyone to the Speakin webinar on the changing consumer behavior. My name is Nijansh and I represent Speakin. And we are very thankful to our wonderful speakers and the audience for joining us this evening. We'll be spending 45 minutes for the discussion and following up with a Q&A. I'll start by welcoming Mr. Mohit Arora. Mr. Arora is currently partner at Mondriaan, Singapore, and he was the former head of India and APAC operations at JD Power, where he played a pivotal role in advising automotive manufacturers on their customer satisfaction, product quality, business strategy, network improvement, and network improvement programs. Thank you, Mr. Arora, for joining and structuring today's discussion. I now welcome Mr. Dede Patmawidjaja. He's the managing director of Nielsen Indonesia and has previously worked with firms like Nestle, ISS, and Castrol. He has an in-depth experience in marketing and sales with a proven track record in world-leading FMCGs. Thank you, Dede, for joining us. Now welcoming Ms. Pallavi Singh. She's the marketing director at BMW India and has extensive experience in the premium market segment related to business strategy, customer experience, and communication. She has also previously led marketing for Morris Garages India, Harley Davidson Motor Company, and Yamaha Motors. We welcome you, ma'am. Next, I welcome Mr. Sanjiv Kapoor. He is an aviation veteran and a part-time advisor to Go Air. He was previously at the helm of Vistara Airlines, where he played a crucial role in its growth from 40 to 200 flights a day. Prior to Vistara, he led SpiceJet, India's second largest LCC, through its unprecedented turnaround as its CEO and de facto CEO. It's a pleasure to have you, sir, with us today.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Prasun Choudhary. He brings with him more than 14 years of work experience and is currently an operating partner with OYO Rooms in Japan. He has worked in 6 countries, India, Singapore, Hong Kong, UK, Tanzania, and US. His work displays his dynamism and integrate quality to seamlessly adapt to new cultures and roles. Happy to have you with us, Mr. Choudhary.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I leave the floor to Mr. Arora for taking this discussion forward.
Okay, great. So I think there's a bit of a problem with the internet connections. I think everybody is on some webinar or the other trying to figure out how to go about the times that we are witnessing today. These are clearly unprecedented times. I think all of us have probably heard, spoken about all of these things several times. I was just watching CNN over the last couple of days. And for me, what was rather remarkable was the expression that I saw on several of the world leaders, from east to west. You take any market, any country, the expression is rather that of frustration, anguish, dismay. It's basically, what you see written so clearly on these, these individuals and professionals, I would say. And probably this is just a glimpse of, the overall impression or the expression that exists across every boardroom, across every manager, across every business out there, whether large or whether small. It is pretty much extremely perplexing to understand what do we do right now and how do we really navigate the floor in front of us. I wanted to share something that I came across, a very interesting piece of information and data. Again, I think we have people here who are luminaries in their business, who have achieved so much, and we'll of course come to all the panelists in a second. But I thought I would use these these couple of slides to set the tone. And when you look at this particular survey that was done by YPO across over 2,500 respondents, you really find that, and this is respondents when I'm saying these are chief executives of companies, what you really find is, what is the kind of negative impact that they see in terms of the different business aspects, as well as, are there actions being taken? You find that, again, business travel is something that comes right on the top. revenues, new business development getting impacted, supply chain getting impacted, costs getting impacted, government regulations changing. That's what you see on the left-hand side, basically things where, the CEOs are currently experiencing a negative impact, and probably going forward, they expect the impact to be even greater over the next 6 months. When you come to the right-hand side of the chart, right-hand side of the slide, you basically see that there are actions which are being taken. And I was a little surprised when I saw this particular list of actions being taken. There are, discussions about regular updates to employees, new health and safety procedures, cancellation of major events, reduction of cost, shifting of short-term goals, and so on. What was interesting for me was that we had very little discussion about consumers and customers. And that's when I was talking to the speaking team, and we thought that it will be very apt to bring in, the raison d'être right into the center of our discussion. For any business, the main raison d'être of the business is the customer, and bringing him to the center to understand what we need to be doing going forward would probably help us unravel some of the challenges that we see in front of us. I also wanted to share, and of course we have some leading professionals, as I said, from the travel industry, and I will come to them in a second. If you look at the slide on the left-hand side, the chart on the left-hand side, this basically shows air traffic. This is from a website called Flight Radar. This is as of just a month ago, and what you see right now is actually an extreme thinning down of that traffic at this point of time. Similarly, I got this information from Singapore Airlines, which used to fly to about 130 odd destinations every day, multiple times every day. What you see today is just a handful of destinations that are now covered. So looking at from a world that was connected to a world that is extremely unconnected, what probably rattled me was a comment from Alexander Dejanak, the Director General of IATA, yesterday, where he said that in these conditions, there is no airlines which is able to fly and make money. So either we cannot fly, or we will have to increase prices 50 to 100%. It is the end of cheap air travel for everyone. I would basically come to, I think, my first two panelists, and I'd like to introduce them out here and probably start with their thoughts on this process, on this particular statement that you see. Sanjiv, you have been a veteran of the airline industry. When you look at the comment that you see, will we fly again?
We will fly again. I'm pretty certain of that, but it's going to take a long time for us to get back anywhere close to what we consider normal. Right now, those two flight radar charts you showed, because those little airplane blips are much larger than what they would be to scale, actually shows it to be not as bad as it really is. In reality, 95% of the flying is gone. In India, for example, there is 0 flights from April 24th, which is from March 24th, which is more than a month now. We've had 0 flights, international or domestic. The only flights that operate in India are cargo flights. We're in a situation now where, once flights resume, it'll take months, maybe even a year or two for normal demand to come back, because consumers are going to be A, scared of flying because of, the risk of the virus, and B, maybe less able to afford flying because of the fact that the entire economy and jobs are being impacted. And third, smallest contribution might be that because of all this new technology that they've all been exposed to, Zoom, etc. For every 3 flights they used to do in the past, they might do 2, if you're lucky. But even that is a 1/3 reduction in flying. And in most markets in the world, airlines are lucky if they make a 10% margin. So even if each one of us here reduces our flying from 3 to 2, we have gone from 10% margin to negative 20% margin, essentially, right? By losing 1/3 of our revenues. So the situation is dire. What the IATA DG said is true in the short term, in the sense that, look, if people are flying less, then we need to cover the cost by raising fares, which is what I think is implying. However, unfortunately, in most countries in the world, in most places in the world, when you raise fares, your demand will further drop. So there is no easy way out of this. And I think airlines like in India, which are not flying, are obviously getting 0 revenues, but they are incurring huge fixed costs. If you start flying and the loads the percentage of seats occupied is, only 30%, 40%, we'll probably lose even more money because the cost of operating the flight is going to be higher than the revenues, and it's better to just stay grounded. So it's a very, very, dire situation for the aviation industry, which is why all around the world you've seen governments step in to give multi-billion-dollar loans and grants to the airlines. Because if the airlines collapse, and many of them have, and like the virus itself, the impact on the airlines is that the weak will first be consumed and then it'll come for the strong. We are all just hoping that this nightmare is over eventually, but there are many airlines which will not come out of this in one piece at all. So I'm sorry if I'm starting this talk on a very gloomy note, but that is unfortunately the reality we're facing in the industry.
Yeah, and I think, I will come back to some of the points that you talked about, Sanjiv. Let me head over to Prasun. And Prasun, again, you have been somebody who has also been a part of the, tourism industry, very closely associated with it. And you are somebody, again, I believe that right now you are linking in you're based out of Japan right now. The challenges that you see here, that are there for the airline industry, probably even more severe when you look at the hotel industry, for example, because the number of choices that are there. If I have to fly from Singapore to India, I have to take one of the airlines. But once I'm in India, I will have so many options where I choose to stay. How do you see, the hotel industry recover in the post-COVID world?
Great. Thanks, Mohit. Thanks for the question, and a very good evening to everyone. I think, yes, this is, as Sanjiv mentioned, these are very unprecedented times for us. If we look at the 2008 crisis, the 9/11 crisis, there was never an erosion of demand to this extent. We see a short-term erosion of almost 70 to 80% in our demand, in depending on the other countries. And the challenge with the other two crises was that things picked up fast after this, because there was never a sense of worry or a sense of that there is something invisible which is going to affect us. So I really kind of agree with what Sanjiv was saying, is that yes, things will be very, very challenging for us. But in the hotel industry, I also see some silver linings. And I think the silver linings are two things, in my opinion, with my last being a member who started OYO in India and launched it in other countries, is that I feel that the first to kick in will be corporate travel. And corporate travel is kind of a travel which is forced, if I can use that word, because sometimes people will have to start traveling and they will have to stay in hotels. So I think that it will pick up. Second is the silver lining for me, which I see in Japan specifically for the last few months. It's very interesting that Japan, we can still run at a 40% occupancy. And the reason why I'm able to run Japan at a 40% occupancy is domestic travel. So I think a lot of countries where things will ease a bit in the short term, I would see domestic travel probably picking faster. And these are the two areas where I feel, yes, your question of there would be multiple options, the price, demand parity, how much do you bring your price down to capture that demand? All of that will be a larger question to answer. But I think the next 2-3 months are going to be very, very tough for us. But I feel things will become better in hospitality compared to airlines much faster, given the domestic travel and the way in the corporate travel will pick up. That's my opinion at this point of time.
And would you see that kind of change or movement across Asia Pacific? Are there any forward indicators towards that?
I would specifically talk of 2 or 3 countries. I really don't have much idea about Malaysia and Indonesia at this point of time, but I think India, Japan, some parts of Nepal, I think these will be areas which will pick much faster, because once you open things, and it is because of the high, if you look at some of the economic factors, the high migrant population. You can't expect people in India to be just sitting out of the villages and cities and doing nothing. So once they start, it will be a necessity in these countries. I think that's where my forward indicators goes ahead. The school season, the college season, and why I'm talking a lot about these is because OYO, typically, if we look at our core demand, it is the kind of say $20 to $30. That's the kind of the larger chunk of the demand will come from these kind of demand factors, these kind of customer segment. And I see some of these forward indicators are on the good note for us, specifically Japan being a country where, because there's an emergency, but there's no lockdown. That means people are free to travel. And in that country, if I can operate at a 40% occupancy, which is obviously not like the best numbers to operate, I see that it to be a good indicator for the budget hospitality to bounce faster than the other industries.
Okay, great. I mean, I think before I go, come back to this topic, because I would start to look at some of the elements which are core drivers of this change. Let me bring in a couple of other slides, and then probably I'll also open this up to a broader panel here. Just give me a second. If you look at the some of the things that have shaped industries over time, and there, I mean, I try to look at what are the moments that have truly impacted, which have shaped the customer experiences in history. What you look at essentially is at a time when you find that airlines was very, very glamorous, and the experiences were unparalleled in terms of hospitality. There was 9/11. And with 9/11 coming in, what you found was there were more queues, there was more screening. You could not carry many things that you previously could very easily carry. You had to, again, change the way things were, the way that you had to consume that particular service, right from, booking to, while you were at the airport, and then while you were in flight, and then even when you are coming out. If you look at, for example, some of the renderings, what people have said is even going forward after COVID, these are just some illustrations of, companies who are innovating and trying to bring in what it could look like in a coach compartment going forward, where, essentially, whether you see on the left-hand side, the image on the left or the image on the right, you essentially see that, there is a significant, you are actually caged in. And how, I mean, I don't know what the experience would be like, but clearly it's going to be significantly different. If you look at the passenger car industry, again, there was a time, in the good old days of 50s and 60s, early 60s, we all talked about, horsepower, we talked about space, we talked about, the smoothness, and, all of the other elements. And then came the seatbelt regulation. You could do whatever, but you need to get tied into your seat, and that's it. I mean, of course, there was, it totally changed the way people consumed the entire experience of a car, where, and that is something, again, very similar to what we see when we look at the passenger aviation industry. We see that there is a significant change in the way people experienced the particular product or solution. Let me come back to the panel here. When you look at, the way, I think this question goes back to you, Sanjiv. When you look at consumer experience, why people flew, what did they seek when they were flying, whether it was business traveler or a leisure traveler, how would these things change from a customer behavior, from a consumer experience perspective in the months and years to come?
See, I think those renderings that you showed of the aircraft cabin, those are conceptual renderings. I do not think it's, it's going to really go that way. And even if it does, it'll take years by the time the surviving airlines can afford to change the cabins around and put those new seats in. But more realistically speaking, the biggest change that's going to happen is while the virus is around, people will have to travel uncomfortably in the sense that they have to be wearing masks at all times. Service on board the airlines is going to be reduced to the bare minimum to minimize contact between passengers and crew. And a lot of the frills are going to go away again because you want to minimize the contact and minimize the number of items that come into the aircraft and so on and so forth. So I think there's going to be short-term a great decrease in your ability to simply travel like the good old days and relax and read there's not even going to be in-flight magazines aboard just in case they get contaminated by the previous passenger. So it's going to be like a seat on a cargo aircraft where you just have a seat, sit down, leave your mask on, and hope that no one around you is infected. So unfortunately, that's the scenario. Our crew are going to be wearing at a minimum masks and gloves. Some airlines have actually made the crew have designed uniforms for the crew, which are full PPE suits. So it's going to be like traveling in a hospital ship. So that's the near to short-term view. Now, it all depends on the virus. As long as the virus threat is there, things will not go back to normal. But other viruses have come and gone, Spanish flu, whatever it is. And so either if the population develops its herd immunity or we get the virus, the vaccine going for the virus, when one of those two happens, things are returning to normal. So I don't see once the virus is controlled, I think things will be back to the way it used to be. I don't see airlines, investing in those kinds of cabins and products and seats. And even if they did, it'll become unviable as a business. It'll just kill the demand side of the equation.
So I think, Prasun, just very briefly, looking at what Sanjiv said, when it comes to airlines, it is just a couple of hours that you spend usually. These are, short flights sometimes. Of course, the long hauls could be up to, 24 hours. But when you look at hotels, it is a very different kind of a consumption pattern, right? People come in, they stay for days. They are trying to have a relaxing time. They don't want to de-stress. How would the shape of consumer experience be when you look at the hotel industry in the months and years to come?
You're on mute.
Yeah. I think the last few months has specifically taught us few things, and I'll be very specific on for us. If I look at consumer, it's not just the consumer, it's also the owner with which we operate, the owner who operates the hotel. And I think a very paradigm shift, what we have seen is use of technology. And I'll give you a very, very basic example. In a normal world, an owner would just want to pick a phone and call one of our employees and would want to meet them, like our operations manager or a business development person, and would want to meet and chat with them. I think our call center users has gone significantly up because now the owner does not want to really meet someone. If his or her questions are answered online, they are very happy about it. The same is happening on the consumer side. While hospitality is typically, and I'll talk more about budget hospitality, is typically more of human interference where you see someone at the reception welcoming you, probably giving you a welcome drink. And I'm just talking of the basics. The consumer now wants more of what you call a zero touch policy, more of a lowest interference possible. And we see that happening. So for us, and for most of the hospitality industry, it would be how do you make seamless technology in the next few months? Use this COVID as an opportunity to bring more and more seamless technology, which what the consumer or the owner at this point of would want, like less of talking, less of human interference, more of just use of technology to check in, use of technology to solve any issue, use of technology to answer any challenges. I think that's how I am seeing the shift happening, and companies which will be able to adopt it fast will give a better consumer experience.
Okay, interesting. And I think we'll come back to some of the points that you talked about, technology and the elements. I just have another quick question, because I think it could also be something which would be both to Sanjiv and Prasun to start with. There is the human angle to it. There is the employee angle to it, right? So while there are certain tasks that can be replaced by technology, when it comes to room service, there will be somebody who will be walking into my room to get me room service. There would be somebody who would be actually coming and cleaning the room. So the other thing is that there will be somebody who would be, coming in while I'm not there or while I am there. How does the business build confidence or how do hotels build confidence in their customers that they are safe?
I'll take this question initially, and I'll just come to two specific points. The food habits will change. I'll give you classic examples where there is less of restaurant eating now. There are takeaways lying there, the same food, there are takeaways, and there's just one person who's serving. And the consumer also feels better to just take that and go to his room. The entire concept of, at least I see that happening very frequently in hotels now. Coming to service, I think very soon, or it is already happening in some ways, there will be some kind of hygiene certifications which will certainly immediately come in. Something like that will give more confidence that my hotel is this kind of hygiene certified, or something. There are multiple certifications across WHO, across multiple organizations, but I think we will start using that, and even the hotels will start using that. In the near term, these are the two things I see immediately to give that confidence to the guest and that ease of staying in the hotel.
Sanjiv, would you like to add anything from an airlines industry perspective, looking at, again, how do we make customers comfortable from the human element, the human interaction element, while there are multiple touch points that we can probably look at migrating to a digital or an online or a technology enabled solution, but there are certain parts of the process that may be totally, that may continue to be, human enabled.
Yeah, so we're working with the airports on this globally. There's going to be social distancing at the airports at every interaction point, security, boarding, at the buses and the aero bridges, check-in counters. We're going to try to minimize the need to interact with people, as Prasun was saying, print out a boarding pass in advance, use the kiosks. We're going to actually sanitize the kiosk after every user. We're going to sanitize the flights after every flight, every contact surface, every surface that can come into contact with a human will be cleaned after every flight. That will increase the ground time on the flight, of course. We're going to fumigate the aircraft every night. So all this is going to be very visible, or at least we will talk about it a lot to the customers to reassure them that we're doing the best we can, besides mandating the use of masks and everything else I talked about. Equally important, as you suggested, is we need to build confidence and take care of our staff and crew. So we're going to make sure that they have all the protective equipment, that every measure possible to keep their working environment safe and clean. After every customer's checked in, the counter will be wiped down. The ticket offices at the airports, the back office will be fumigated each night. The cabin crew will be, told to minimize interacting in the aisle, etc. They'll also be made to sit further apart, during takeoff and landing. The jump seats are very close together, etc. So we'll make them sit further apart. So a whole lot of things will be done to visibly reassure all stakeholders that we're doing everything we can to minimize the risk. But again, the human mind is such that the bottom line is people will avoid traveling, avoid flying at least, until they feel the threat is gone. And so all this can help us a little bit, but it won't fundamentally save the industry or save travel until the threat goes away.
Great. Okay, let me come back to my presentation, and that's when I will bring in two of the other panelists here. If you really look at it, from an overall perspective, as they say, life costs very little. I mean, if I have to spend in terms of basic amenities, water, food, air, shelter, clothing, this doesn't really cost much. But when I look at
Mohit, we lost you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's gone on mute.
Okay.
I think he's lost the connection when he was trying to project.
Well, that was really insightful from you guys. This morning I had a completely different discussion. I was with CEOs of some FMCG. They were recording quite reverse situation, I have to say. So uh, it's really good to be among this panel and learn. Okay. Hi, Mohit. We lost you there.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I don't know. There is some problem with our systems here. But let me come back to the screen. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. Sorry for the disruption. So essentially, when we are looking at, as they say, life costs very little, but lifestyles is what we spend on. I mean, that's where a lot of marketing focus, a lot of businesses, bring in that, build that desirability that we basically, want to buy things that we, really crave for. This is a study that was published by Nielsen just a couple of weeks back. If you look at it, what you are looking at is how many consumers bought which of these items for the first time due to COVID-19, and how many of these they are going to buy again. And when you look at some of these elements out here on the left-hand side, you find that there are nearly 50% or 49% of consumers who said that they purchased a hand sanitizer for the first time. But they would say that they would continue to do so going forward. Start reading the news. There were people who were not reading the news. Today, that's up from 33% who said that they consumed the news for the first time. Now, 81% of them say that they would continue to do so in the months and years to come. Again, I mean, this is just a picture that you see overall. I would like to, come back to our panel. And Pallavi, I have a question. When you start looking at, this kind of, thought process, the kind of change that you see at this point of time, buying a car has, for some people, been a necessity, but for many others, a discretionary purchase. In terms of how lifestyle driven things the consumption of those will change in the future is of course a question. But you being at BMW, and again you being a very, very astute marketer, from your perspective, how would you look at the changes in these needs and wants of the customers, and what would you suggest that marketers do to build the level of attractiveness that once was there in owning some of these products?
No, thanks for the question. And I think lots of learnings what Mr. Sanjeev and Prasun kind of highlighted before. So thanks for the panel today, and hello to everybody who's joined in today. I think I'll kind of divide your question in two phases. One is, these are extraordinary times, so it needs extraordinary measures, which I think marketing is no more about doing what we did in the 90s. It's all about being data driven, understanding consumer needs, and something like this, which was bound to happen with automotive. I would say that automotive really needs to change how to talk to consumers. And that's where this post-COVID reality is going to hit, especially marketers, to understand how do you market to consumers in different phases. There is no one customer who's in entry level or a customer who's at a, at a top level of lifestyle. Customers are consuming, whether it's buying a new watch. You're seeing people saying that it's one life, and it's Nielsen research, which is showcasing past few weeks, I have one life, let me live it to the full. There are those set of people as well who want to live in the today because of the post-COVID reality, which is going to hit us, and it is right here. And second, I think, is from a lifestyle point of view. Lifestyle is now more to do with what I want. It's my personal space than what everybody wants around me. That's the new India which is coming in, which is what marketers are also trying to tap in. But the second point on cars, I think, if you look at cars are like homes, right? It's your safe environment to be in, whether it's you or yourself. I think cars is a segment from a marketing point of view. Safety is in cars, right? You can take care of your car because it belongs to you. You're not dependent on somebody else to take care of your product. Once the car is with you, you can take care from a hygiene and a safety point of view. And what we are seeing at this point, safety as an angle in India never was played. But if you look at all European markets, or if you look at Japan for that matter, safety matters a lot to consumers. 0 to 100 speed, they talk about safety first, then they talk about acceleration. Now safety has different measures, which is what India will see it for the first time, that it also means buying a luxury car or buy an expensive car or an expensive motorcycle or an expensive cycle means that there are ways of right braking, right information, the air filters in the cars. People will start looking at these products from a different lens, which they didn't look at. It was all about jitna sasta hai utna le lo. You know what? It's always about kitna deti hai. That perception, to some degree, in my view, is going to have a different reality check. So from a marketing point of view, I think the more virtual does not mean only digital, but virtual also means hiring the right skill set of people who are able to sell on the virtual space. You may not have people. I think face-to-face interaction is going to come so much down in months to come. How are we marketing the product? Our sales consultants have to become, in a lot of ways, chatbots. Who are able to have good sense of humor, but able to judge customers. What do they want? Is a customer looking at a red car or a blue car, a car configurator or a bike configurator? All of these things is all to do with skill set. So AI, ML, which automotive is not so used to, I think that's going to be a need of the hour for all the marketers to understand. It's no more about making beautiful ads. It's about how are you talking to customers in a personalized way? What do they want? And target their information as per what their need is, and analyze the need of the consumer, not analyze the need of the company. I think that's a dramatic shift. I would say marketers have to adapt to this new change. Yeah.
That's very interesting, Pallavi, and I think there are multiple things that you talked about. Similar to what Prasun and briefly mentioned, even Sanjiv talked about technology, embedding technology. But I think
Mohit, we lost you. Am I not hearing him, or
no, I can't hear him either.
Okay.
I think we lost him again.
I thought maybe I did.
Yep. Okay, I think he's coming back.
Yeah.
There we go. He's back.
Thank you. I'm so sorry for this technological glitches today. I don't know what's really happening to our
technological failure sometimes. Don't worry.
I know. And that's where we have humans, right, to back up. So I have a second question to you, Pallavi. I mean, when you look at car purchase, for example, from my previous experience, what I understand is that nearly 70 to 80% consumers would take some kind of a credit loan, to purchase the asset, right? I mean, that is pretty common. Now, in the way that we look at forward, would this part of consumer behavior change, given that credit might be at a premium or credit might not be available so freely because the NBFCs and banks would be under pressure? Would that part of the purchase process be any different now?
I think so. Like, if you look at markets like Japan or Korea or China or Philippines for that matter, all of these markets have already adopted to a virtual payment process. There are technologies like Adobe Signature, Adobe Campaign. Adobe Signature can help you sign it then and there. Only from an RBI point of view, you still have to, it's a policy of the government that you need to have face-to-face interaction of the customer where he or she lives. I think that's one reform which needs to come in, and which will. Markets like Japan, China, Indonesia, Malaysia already has it. I really foresee in the future it's going to happen. But again, it's the play of online virtual experience of getting all the documentation done online. It happens till the end, till the payment is made. It's just just the RBI regulation which needs to kick in. If it can be done virtually with the CIBIL score, of course, it happens at this point. Today, people are buying, you buy an expensive watch of 10 lakh, an Omega watch Seamaster you can buy online, and you can pay, a personalized watch with your name online, done everything. I guess going forward with just RBI norm coming in, that can also be solved. And that's going to happen in months to come, in my view. That's the only option. I think we lost him again. But I did answer his question, I guess.
Yes, you did. But also, it's a bit about technology, and I think that's why Indonesia is still less than 10% in terms of online sales.
No, I think Zoom works pretty well. I guess it's the connection.
No, Zoom is, I think, pretty well. I'm just joking, but yeah, the penetration of internet is high in Indonesia, but somehow the transaction is still low for a lot of industries. I mean, the average less than for 10%. For a lot of FMCGs, it's single digit.
I think, but that's also to do with people are not used to it. Once you don't have an option, it's all about nobody thought you will use mobile like the way you use mobile today. You don't need human beings. You want to just be with your mobile. I guess it's about habit. Once that habit comes in, I mean, today you don't want to order vegetables, right? You just want to go to a grocery store or online store and you buy everything which you wanted, like as fresh vegetable to buy. There was a time in India you wanted to pick up vegetables and get home. Now you don't have time. So I guess it's about habit and it's about ease of convenience. If ease of convenience, habit, and assurance and peace of mind, if all these things are taken care of, then I don't see there's any concern for people not to do it.
Well, we'll see. This prolonged situation will create new habits, if anything. So what we're seeing is probably, this, I would say, short term, quote unquote, but there will be some habit changing. So there will be probably a new normal coming.
Yeah, the new normal coming, yes.
Okay.
Hi, Mohit. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. I just shifted to a different network. I'm so sorry. There was some confusions and some this thing because of me. I'm really sorry for that.
No problem.
So sorry. I think Pallavi, I think I briefly heard parts of the answers that you gave, but I think looking at what you are talking about from a credit perspective, again, looking at a customer who's buying a discretionary kind of a product going forward, in terms of the dealership experience, how would some of those things change? I mean, from the reasons to buy a car, how would they kind of change in the months and years to come? Looking from a dealership perspective, what would customers expect the dealerships to do so that they feel welcome once again?
I think something which is a great takeaway from a hotel industry, like if you look at the Oberois or you look at, the high-end Four Seasons, when you walk into the space, they know your name. They know what kind of perfume you prefer. They know the kind of cake you would like. They know the kind of God you pray to, for example, and they'll have this little Ganesh, right in your room with flowers and all. I think it's about personalization, especially when it's a high-end purchase. If I'm spending so much money, whether it's a car or it's a motorcycle, I keep going to bikes because that's my first love. Sorry. So it's a high-end watch, or it's a getaway, which is an experiential holiday. It's about how well the sales representatives or a product genius knows my need. And if I'm able to evaluate that much in advance before Pallavi walks into the dealership, and I know that, Pallavi has, she's married and she's been working for so long. She's taken her last vacation, for example, to Kerala, and having that personal conversation when a person walks in, it breaks the ice. And I think breaking the ice, understanding your consumer at a personal level and understanding that the customer would prefer what in the car. Is it the color the customer likes? Is it the seat personalization? Or is it, what is it? Is it trigger point from because of the wife, or it's because of the child? These are the nuances, especially for a luxury or a high-end purchase. If a sales consultant or a product genius knows much in advance, I think you've got the customer for a lifetime. It's the first interface. I think all salespeople have to become super salesmen and you can't just be about transaction price. It's about how are you really exchanging the moments of life in consumers' life is going to define luxury experiences in the future. A lot to learn. I think automotive has a lot to learn from airline industry and hotels who do this exceptionally well. So that's going to be the new normal in my view.
Great. I think I'll come over to Dede. Some of the things that Pallavi and Sanjiv and Prasun mentioned, of course, they have global relevance. Coming specifically to, the study that I shared with you regarding Nielsen, and where you are seeing that many of these changes are today getting embedded. Consumers saying that they will continue to do so even after, as they are living with the COVID or even post-COVID. So my question to you, Dede, is that as a market researcher, as somebody who has been, looking at consumer research very closely, how far do you see, these things completely changing our way of life, whether it be, for the Asian markets or whether it be for the Indonesian market?
Thanks for that. Well, we sort of touched on it a bit while you were away. There will be this new there will be this new normal. I think I echo almost everyone here. Look, somehow I don't see us coming back to where we were. I mean, this will probably close in terms of impact what 9/11 did for the world. For Indonesia, for instance, you go to any mall right now, metal detector is a must. Any office. You have to give in your ID. So in this sense, I think you have a big change, and the longer the way we live in the quote unquote quarantine, Indonesia is probably not as strict as India. Habits will form. Now in here we have seen quite a drastic change. I mean, what you saw the data was probably just a couple months or the last 2 months. What you didn't see was just 4 months ago in Indonesia. People, were their number one buying was indulgence. Actually, it was more about feeling good. A lot of desserts, a lot of beverages, creamy stuff, and then looking good. Makeup was doing well, and then just in a couple of months, suddenly, you saw hand sanitizer, vitamins. Now, some of it are, of course, panic buying and also pantry stuffing, but as we see now, we track it on a weekly and a monthly basis. Some of them are not spikes; they are there. I mean, the vitamins now are just becoming habits. Buying fresh food, cooking at home again. Miss Pallavi, we were talking about selecting, food. That's coming back. I mean, people watching families together around the TV. That's coming back. That was gone from Indonesia. So in a sense, there is a new normal, which takes up current condition, but in essence, it's being forced. So the prolong of this situation will have this habit moving forward. Now, I was slightly in a different forum earlier today. I was actually sitting around with a lot of CEOs with FMCG. So they're slightly in a different place, compared to the airline, to the hotels and the cars. And I think also a lot of this industry would like to keep some of these new habits. So you have these two driving factors shaping of redistribution of health. For every up of these toiletries and hygiene, you also have a lot of categories down. I mean, today in Indonesia, we're facing the Ramadan. So a lot of categories which were not up, was not part of the recent weeks, suddenly jumped up. Syrup, biscuit. So those things comes up again. Now, I think this is, again, resiliency of our consumers. And I think in here, what we need to understand is we don't manage the consumer. We manage ourselves. I think in here, we just need to understand the consumers better. And hopefully what we can do is, I guess a lot of us in here, we just survive for today, but we need to prepare and thrive for tomorrow, because like it or not, tomorrow will come. And this is pretty much how we can shape. I mean, look, if you asked me 2 months ago, Nielsen, our office, I wouldn't imagine working from home. Now we get 100%, literally, working from home. And we had to. I don't like WhatsApp. I like shaking hands and meeting people. Now I have to do all this thing in WhatsApp, which I still am not comfortable, by the way. But we had to adapt. So those kind of things, I think, are dictated upon us. and those who actually, and I was really happy. Prasun saying the silver linings, and I think those kind of mindset will actually help this the industry come through, because the consumers are there. They are looking for experience. Lifestyle is a bit more expensive, but the consumers are wanting that. I don't know if you heard, but events are gone. Concerts are gone. But the One World together with Lady Gaga, they made 127 million. 127 million for 8 hours. I don't know any concert, any band in the world has done that, live. Or Travis Scott, my son loves it, did a concert in Fortnite and broke all records. So we've seen the human coming out. I truly believe in our ingenuity to get through this, and I really truly believe in our consumers. We will find a way to get this, because there is tomorrow.
Yeah. So coming to one more important aspect is, I think we'll come towards more or less the end of our discussion. But one of the topics that I also wanted to talk to you about was, understanding customer behavior. And with Nielsen, of course, you have been at the forefront of doing it. You were at Nestle before, so you have again been a very keen marketer yourself. How will professionals like Pallavi, how will professionals like Prasun or Sanjiv, basically understand customer behavior going forward, given the fact that now it will be even very difficult to even meet them, especially in this part of the world where there's so much of face-to-face interaction and face-to-face market research that happens. How would we draw our inferences and our, how would we build our thought process as marketers to understand where is this customer behavior heading?
Okay, I think that touch point on personalization is the key. That's definitely how consumers would like to feel. But the way we market, I think today, as much as we like to say, yes, we can do that, especially via digital, it's still not viable. Now, I think moving forward, we need to understand, let's say, try to group and at least consumers in a level that is cost efficient in a way. Today, for instance, if we say consumers are staying at home, TV is pretty good to actually invest today, believe it or not. So the other thing in here, I think in terms of consumer, we need to understand, if we try to divide, I think we need to understand different level of consumers. I will take maybe the easiest one is by income. We will see basically what we see in here. There is, at least in Indonesia, 3 very sharpening divide consumers. At one end, you have the high-end consumers who pretty much could live their lifestyle through this quarantine period. You get the big chunk of middle who basically can get through, okay, depending how long this would be. And then you have the chunk at the bottom who basically are day-to-day. And depending who you market, I think you really need to see that side also, and then what your business can do for them. And so we need to understand also who are we catering to. I think in terms of, yes, it's nice if we can personalize it, but at the end of the day, I think for a lot of companies, it's very hard to personalize in that sense and still make it viable. But at least understand there's 3 level of consumers, like also 3 levels of industries today. I mean, those who are staying low, and those who are actually striving, those who are actually, getting by literally, and the same for consumers. And they need to be understood better, because 3 of them, those 3 needs are different. Their needs for today and their needs for tomorrow. But rest assured, focusing on tomorrow is a lot better, because the payoff will be much better rather than just for today.
Yeah. So I think one last question from my side, and then I think there are a couple of questions from the panel, the other audience. So I will come on that. One of the important things when we look at customers is, if you look at from a customer perspective, customers are also pretty scared, right? They are very hesitant. They are very concerned whether, the service or the product that I'm wanting, can it be delivered? Can I, also go back to my own life? While yes, on one side, we talked a lot about the marketeer's concern and how we see some of those things. Looking at from a consumer, there is equal bit of concern that, and worry that, will my life be normal again? As marketeers, as people who have been understanding this part of consumer psyche, what is it that we can do, whether it be airlines, whether it be hotels, whether it be cars, or whether it could be any sector for that matter, to kind of lay the path in front of the customer, where he takes these baby steps towards becoming a full regular consumer, as he was in just a couple of months ago. What are those steps that organizations and businesses across sectors, what are the steps they need to take? I mean, Sanjiv, anybody, Pallavi, Prasun?
So, for aviation, for airlines, we're in the mass transit business. So in addition to making customers feel as at ease as possible in terms of the protection we're taking,
Right.
to keep them safe from the germs, there isn't too much else we can do, because I think in some sense it's almost a moral dilemma. If we airlines start discounting heavily to try to get people to fly again when they're not, feeling confident, there's a bit of a moral dilemma there, because you're kind of saying that, hey, come take the risk. And I don't think we want to do that. So we just have to, be practical, sensible, ethical about this, protect them as much as possible. And again, back to what I said initially, just wait until we find a way to get beyond this, where this is no longer something that people are scared of. So actually the answer for us, for travel and tourism and airlines, is in the hands of the scientists and nature, either herd immunity, which is nature, or scientists to find a vaccine for this. Unfortunately, the future is not in our own hands.
Great. Prasun, Pallavi, any last comments? Otherwise, we will take on some of the questions that are there from the panelists.
No, I think we can take questions because people must be
Okay,
waiting.
great. So there's a question. Yeah, we're coming to the end. So, there's a question, but probably, does it mean that we may have to take appointments to go and feel products like in a museum? Will walk-ins decrease? Probably also goes to dealerships. Would we see walk-ins coming down? Would you like to take that, Pallavi?
Sure. No, I think it's not with COVID that the walk-ins would come down dramatically will come down, of course, but the walk-ins came down even before, because now people don't have so much time. So this whole idea of delivery experience will of course come down, and the delivery would happen at at your home or at your office. That's why personalized experience at a click of a button maybe would be necessary, especially when it comes to cars. I mean, I really see that cosmetic as a business, if you look at Sephora or you look at other, they are really gearing up because they know that this demand is going to go up. So they're gearing up to get this e-commerce bit going, to deliver it at people's houses with a personalized note. So I think walk-ins dramatically have to come down. Brick and mortar has always been in a question anyways before COVID as well. It's expensive. The new retail formats are critical. If you look at places like Japan or China, I get very fascinated with how Japan's kind of looked at business of brick and mortar. It's very different. It's more lifestyle. It's to do with personalization. It's one car, but you have cafes where only few people can come in. There's a bookstore. So I think those things of retail format will come up where people would want to walk in and personalize. But otherwise, in general, retail format definitely with the new drop-in walk-in is going to happen. So the new normal, but I would still go with what Sanjiv was talking about, and I think very rightly put in that context, that next 2 months is going to define what the new normal is going to look like, because consumer behavior is very unpredictable. It comes to when people start moving around, but that's going to happen for sure.
I think we just have time for one last question. It's more or less on the dot on the hour. The question basically is from Mr. Singh. Which type of sales will have better space in priority? Online, nearby stores, hybrid? So I think what he's probably trying to ask is, what kind of format, would be something which would probably be more popular or preferred as you go along in maybe, whether it's 2 months or later. I know that we have talked about online sales. Again, I think when you look at the airline industry, probably the level of deployment of technology has already been one of the highest, right? I mean, the disruption that you see, digital disruption that you see in the airline industry is one of the highest. But when you probably look at, the automotive industry, and probably Dede, you can talk about some of the other, FMCG world that you have very closely looked at. What kind of a store would be a better place, in terms of online, the nearby store, or a hybrid model, or an omni-channel model? What is it that would see more traction in the months and years to come?
Should I go first?
Sure.
Okay. So maybe Indonesia is an anomaly in that sense. Right now, it's still, we talked about it with Ms. Pallavi earlier. Somehow the Indonesians still like to touch and see their goods, and probably just to get out of the house also. So the nearby stores is very much still growing rapidly. I mean, in terms of percentage, the online, for FMCG I'm talking about, of course, but nearby stores is still by far, and they're actually quite enjoying a renaissance. But the type of stores is also different. In here, this is a standalone stores, so stores that are not part of a huge complex or a mall. So people actually go there to shop, and food mostly basically in there, not the fashion one. So it's a quicker, let's say, to go type of stores, but they're doing quite nicely. Now the online is growing rapidly, but clearly not for all the categories. I think for the because of the lack of restaurants, you see ready to eat food probably is better online in terms of growth, and also fashion is still online, though the growth is small in that sense. So depending on the categories, but right now for the FMCGs, it's still the nearby stores.
Great. Pallavi, would you like to add anything? Last comments, otherwise we'll just wrap up.
No, I think Dede kind of covered all aspects, but India, I think India is a different market, and consumers primarily, you look at population of our country is the youngest in the world, so we adapt faster, and I think that's the beauty of our country. We adapt, we move, we learn. I think that's why India thrives much more than any other country going forward. So, like I said, new normal only will get defined after next 2 months, but the skill set we adopt today is going to define our tomorrow. So if we change, then we can thrive. If we don't change, then we will drown. So it's important to learn what we do today to adapt to the post-COVID reality. That's what I would say.
I think that was very beautifully summarized, Pallavi. And I think, frankly speaking,
I'm a marketer.
I can see that. So I think, frankly speaking, nobody could have said it better. And I think, it is pretty much clear it doesn't matter whether you are in the world of tourism, whether you are in the world of hospitality. I think it is basically how quickly we can innovate on some of the challenges that are, thrown towards us by Mother Nature or whoever, you want to say. And it's basically, it is our ingenuity that will basically make us survive, understanding how we can innovate on the customer experiences, how we can make the customer comfortable. Because if we don't do that, we will become irrelevant. I mean, as a business, as an organization, as a shop, as a retailer, whoever we may be. So with that, I thank each and every one of you. It was a pleasure understanding and talking to you. I think these are clearly uncertain times, and probably, as you said, we will probably have to do this again 2 months later and say, where are we? What space have we covered till date? But till then, please take care. All the best. I will hand it over back to the speaking team. If they have to add anything, please do so. Speaking team.
Yeah, thank you so much to all our panelists for taking their time out for this discussion. It was very insightful, and that cleared a lot of air regarding the consumer behavior coming forward. I'll also thank the attendees for joining in.